Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Pathway to Residency series. We'll get started in the next few minutes. Just give everyone a little bit of time to get in for the session. Thanks for joining us. Get started in just a few minutes here. Give it one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, let's get going. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to again back to the Pathway to Residency webinar series powered by thalamus.org and Thalamus, a year-long experience guiding future physicians from residency application to intern year. Big thank you to our partners and collaborators on this session as well across many organizations throughout medical education. And a big welcome again from us at Team Thalamus to the Pathway to Residency series. We are really excited by the feedback we've gotten from this series, the response to it so far, the questions that you're all asking, the survey responses as well. Thank you so much. It's really helping us design a great series for everyone. And we're excited to continue that tonight. Again, these are the members of our team who will be involved in various sessions. We have over 250 years of experience in graduate medical education and the transition to residency from many different roles, including program coordinators and administrators. And thanks to our team for the last session program directors, one of which you'll hear from tonight, or two of which you'll hear from tonight, and the same two who are also former DIOs and associate DIOs as well. And so lots of different perspectives, and of course my and all the physicians in our company's path in going through this process as well. And so for tonight, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to do what's called a fireside chat. If you can imagine, if we were in person, the three of us would be sitting in the front of the room in kind of comfortable chairs. It's a very kind of tech conference way to chat. But we're really going to try and present a lot of insider perspectives in this process. And so I'd like to welcome our kind of key guests and speakers tonight. Dr. Suzanne Karen and Dr. Jeffrey Burns, who will be leading us through today's session. And I'd like to just kind of introduce them formally. So Dr. Suzanne Karen is professor of anesthesiology and perioperative medicine at the University of Rochester Medical Center, where she has served as residency program director and vice chair for education since 2008. She's a former assistant designated institutional official for graduate medical education, and also the co-founder of Thalamus. She's widely recognized for her leadership in residency recruitment, educational innovation, and training the next generation of physicians. And so a big welcome to Susie on joining us here tonight. Additionally, we're joined by Dr. Jeffrey Burns, who is a nephrologist and currently the chief academic officer for Thalamus and emeritus professor of medicine and pediatrics at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. He was, until recently, Vice President and Associate Dean for Graduate Medical Education and designated institutional official for the University of Pennsylvania Health System, positions he has held for over 15 years. Dr. Burns has a long-standing interest in medical education and has extensive educational and leadership experience across the medical education spectrum, including program director of the Nephrology Fellowship and interviewer for the Internal Medicine Residency Program. He was also the founding president of the National Association of DIOs, or NADIO. And so, Jeff, big welcome to you to the panel as well.
Jason, maybe I can interrupt you because I suspect that many people in the audience don't know what a DIO is.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the term designated institutional official is used by the ACGME, the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, which is the organization that oversees almost all graduate medical education training in the United States. Each institution, whether it's a clinic or a major academic medical center and everything in between, that trains people in ACGME accredited programs has to have a designated institutional official. The DIO is responsible for oversight of all the graduate medical education programs at that teaching facility, which can range from one residency program to over 100 residency and fellowship programs and over 1,000 trainees. So that's what a DIO is. It was originally started by the ACGME. It's kind of an interesting story about probably 15 years ago when somebody at the ACGME realized or decided that they needed to have somebody at each teaching institution who was designated to receive the bill from the ACGME for the accreditation services they provide. So that's how it got started, but it's evolved into a much more expanded role, as I say, with oversight over all the GME programs at the teaching facility.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. And as you all go on your interviews and throughout this process and you meet your program directors of the programs, all the program directors roll up into the GME office and report into the DIO in some capacity, who's overseeing all the residency and fellowship programs. So both Dr. Karen and Dr. Burns are two huge rock stars in the GME world, a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience, and really excited to have them here tonight. This is the fourth installment of uh, our series. And appreciate everyone who's joined us prior. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. The fifth session, the date has been finalized for August 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We've also kind of finalized the rest of the schedule. We will absolutely announce the full schedule at the next session. The next session also is very IMG focused. Everyone is welcome to attend. I think there are going to be great lessons across the session itself. But given the unique journey that IMGs have through this process, we are focusing an entire session on their journey. And then we'll continue on with AI holistic review and the future of residency recruitment, which I think will be a really, really interesting session, and then continue on to navigating complex paths and kind of dual applications, couples matching, and strategic decision making. We'll then in September get into full swing. Oh, that should not say August 9th. That's a typo. It's just August late. And so we'll get that corrected. But in September, we'll navigate into the navigating the recruitment season and then continue on through becoming a resident sessions, which will be later on in the spring following the recruitment season. And so tonight, I welcome you again to session 4, what programs actually see, understanding how residency applications are reviewed. And the outline for tonight really focuses on 5 themes. First impressions applicants make, what actually stands out in their application, what holistic review is and how it's approached when reviewing applications, kind of the biggest misconceptions overall in the application process or how programs review applications, and then how they read between the lines of the application overall. We'll have a bit of stories along the way, sticking with the narrative theme of this series. We'll talk about things applicants worry about, and we'll ask Jeff and Susie for their best key piece of advice, and then open it up for Q&A as we have as well. Again, yeah, narratives are what drive connection and shared meaning. And for those of you who've been in the prior sessions, what you are trying to continue to do is tell this story of yourself and who you are and where you're going and your educational goals and what you hope to become as a doctor and the patients that you hope to treat and everything and anywhere kind of in between. And on the other side of it, and once you create that application, which is a story, there are people on the other side who will read that application in various capacities, who are busy clinically, who are having a lot of different duties in the hospital or on the medical education side or administratively or otherwise. And you're trying to help them see who you are, both with your numbers and beyond the numbers, your why, your growth, your impact, your future, where you're looking to go. And that narrative and how it resonates with the people that are reading it will eventually determine how you are ranked, and based on your ranking decisions, ultimately where you match. And so let's start with first impressions overall. And the first question I want to throw out to our panelists is, what is the first thing you notice when you open an application?
Susan, do you want to go first? Do you want me to?
Sure, I'll go first. So the first thing I notice is the timeline, actually, and that's how traditionally it's even come across. Like if you're reading it in order of how it comes out on our screen, the CV is laid out in terms of a timeline, and I'm looking to see the story, um, and the experiences and the journey. And so, were there gaps? Were there experiences that lasted for a long period of time? Were there changes of location of where you grew up, trained, went somewhere else? I feel like those first couple of pages tell a story in and of itself in terms of your journey.
So before I do anything else with an application, I make sure that I have in my head the right program that they're applying to. I found myself at one point interviewing applicants to Penn's medical school, Penn's internal medicine residency program, and Penn's fellowship program in nephrology. And I was asking the wrong question at one point. I got mixed up as to who was applying for what, but that's my own quirk. I think I mean, the first thing that really pops up on an application is where you went to school. And that would include college and medical school. So you can't help but see that first. And then beyond that, it is sort of what goes around that? What else have you done that you wanted to make the interviewer or the program director aware of? What have you done besides college and medical school, particularly during college and in medical school. What you did before college doesn't really hold much interest, quite honestly. But the kinds of things you did during college and medical school are important. And I always felt, and this is just my own personal opinion, that it's more important to have something you stuck with and maybe even developed a leadership role with rather than dabbled in a bunch of things here and there and didn't really, nothing resonated with you. You didn't really stick with it very long. You sort of bounced around from activity to activity. So sort of persistence with something that really meant something to you, you were passionate about, and as I said, maybe even had a leadership role with. So those are kinds of things that I look for at the very beginning.
No, thank you. And so, kind of along those lines, so you look at the first thing you notice, and then you start going through the application. What are you trying to understand within the first few minutes?
So I think that really what's most important in this whole process is that you as an applicant for internship and residency should be looking for the place that you fit best. And the people who are interviewing you and looking at your application are also looking for people that they think are a good fit for their program. So that's the sense that I would like to get very early on. Does it feel like this applicant is going to be a good fit for the program? And that, of course, varies tremendously. There's, programs that are very focused on research. There are programs that are put much more weight on community service, or where they grew up is, in a rural versus urban area, their distance traveled, so-called. So people, different programs, different program directors and faculty will be looking for different things that fall under the bucket of fit. But I think for me, that's what I try to get first, because if it doesn't feel like they're a good fit for the program, then I'll probably move on, or look more superficially at some of the other details of the application.
Yeah, that resonates with me, Jeff. I feel like in the last couple of years with the signaling and some of the processing that goes into the application before it even gets to me, we've already honed in on some of the fit part of it. Um, my angle is we're a pretty large program, and I'm not looking to, there's actually not one type necessarily. I'm looking for recruitment of a diverse community of people who might actually learn something from one another. And I work with program directors in other specialties at the University of Rochester who actually are looking for something very specific, and they're trying to build something for their program. But for me personally, um, I'm looking for people who are curious, and I'm looking for that signal in the application that there's curiosity built in there. And I think Dr. Burns was getting there when he was saying the longevity of experiences, the things that kind of kept you working at something, as opposed to just the little, like, I wrote a case report, or I did this one little volunteering here for a month, or I served on something for one day out of a month for a year. Um, I'm looking for somebody who generally loves something in particular, why they stuck with it. And I'm hoping that curious people are going to make curious peers to their classmates, curious doctors are going to want to make things better. So that's the signal I'm looking for, that I'm trying to understand in reading their application in the beginning.
Awesome. Uh, what differentiates a completed application from a compelling one?
I mean, completed is like the letters are submitted on time. Like
Yes.
I'm opening it up and there's nothing missing. The letters are there, everything is uploaded. It looks good. Um, I actually, even if my own medical students are not applying to my program, I actually say, if you don't mind just like at least applying, and I don't care if you're not interested in me, but at least I can give you some feedback on what your application looks like from my end so that I have a sense of, what's complete and what's not complete. And I feel really badly for people who might think that their applications are complete and they're not. And sometimes I feel compelled to kind of let certain people know that that's completed. And there's so many applications to go through that if it's just not complete, we're not going to look at it right away. We might look at it in a month now, but we definitely got to look at it right away. Um, and then compelling is, there's something about there that tells me the story of you in a short period of time. And it doesn't come off as boilerplate, but it comes off as something that's like personal and sincere about you.
Yeah. There we go again. Power of narrative. I didn't feed any answers here, but this is what programs are looking for. They're trying to
Yeah.
understand who you are. So let's move into our next uh, category. Oops. Now, in terms of what actually stands out, how do you how do metrics fit into the broader picture?
I do what against,
How do application metrics fit into the broader picture?
I think that most programs are going to use something numeric, at least part of the initial hurdle. Um, Step scores, what is it, one or two? I forget now, which is numeric, and uh, and grades from clerkships and sub-internships, things like that. Those are going to be important, I think, for almost every program. Um, but and more important for some than others. Um, and then each program really is going to be looking for different things. Some will, be looking at quality and quantity of research. Others are going to be looking at depth of commitment to community service and things like that. Um, I actually found when I was interviewing applicants for both Penn's medical school and the internal medicine program, that if there's something a little bit unusual about them that they did, and I think a good example is varsity sports or some unusual hobby that just sort of spoke to who they were as a person. I will also say that when I looked at, and this is maybe more relevant to people applying to medical school, but I think it's relevant for those applying for internship and residency as well, is is what were you like at the end of the previous path? So when you're applying for medical school, what were you like at the end of college? Not so much what you were like at the beginning of college. And when you're applying for internship and residency, what did you do with the latter part of your medical school training? Always seemed more important to me than what happened in the first 6 months of medical school. People respond to that, the stress of starting medical school, moving, making new friends, feeling isolated, and so forth, very differently. And what's more important, so what was always more important to me is how did you blossom? How did you develop during your years of medical school? And what were you like as a student, as somebody who was inquisitive, and uh, volunteering and things like that towards the end of medical school?
Yeah. No, I agree. And I guess, Susie, question to you, expanding upon that, like what qualities or experiences make you want to learn more about an applicant?
I just wanted to take off a little bit on the previous just to add my own personal
Sure.
perspective. So, when we get like thousands of applications and I'm only going to interview 10% of those, we just have to put filters on, and metrics are a good way. They're distinct fields, and there's a way to hone in on, metrics right away, like scores, as just one way to filter thousands to, a doable number. But that said, there's nothing like if you think that you're not going to make a cut for whatever reason, a personal email that comes along with somebody who's advocating for you really means a lot. Like, don't negate the power of that personal touch to any program director. If somebody who I know through my anesthesiology grapevine is writing to me like, "Hey, this person might not have made your first cut, but it's somebody that I know and is sincere." If you have a chance to take a second look, that's really meaningful. That personal touch adds a lot of value. Um, what qualities make me want to look more? I think we said it before, but honestly, the commitment. Dr. Burns said about the sports, like a team sport or something like that. For me, some of the memorable things have been somebody who was a catcher, and the theme of being a baseball catcher kind of permeated through their entire application. Somebody who's been a server. There was one of my most favorite people on the face of this earth was somebody who was a bit of a non-traditional applicant who worked at Staples for a long time and then thought, I think I hit as high as I could go in the world of Staples and I could do something else. And didn't really have experience kind of working with patients, but it was just such a compelling story. I just wanted to talk to her for a longer time than the interview allowed us. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll add one other thing. Maybe touches also on the issue of compelling, but if you're applying in, I'll use internal medicine since that's what I know best. And the activities you've had in the volunteering and the research that you did in medical school was all in neurosurgery, let's say, and you really haven't dug into the field that you're applying for an internship and residency. That's a little bit of a red flag, but we all recognize that this is a learning experience and you experience different things in medical school and make a decision about what you go into. So if that's what your application looks like, you should be able to address that in your application somewhere in your personal statement. That this is what I have. These are my experiences I have. This is why I've landed in whatever your discipline of application is. If there's a mismatch.
Yeah. No, it comes back again to narrative and just the person reading your application being able to understand the why. Why did you make these decisions? Why is your application coming to my program? And to Susie's point about the power of the network, yeah, that's the original preference signal. It's networking and understanding who that you know can advocate for you going through the process also. And whether you're an MD, DO, IMG, there are all different ways to network, and we'll talk more about that too in other sessions. But people understanding who you are is a big piece in them being able to assess are you well aligned with their program. And so that brings us into our next topic and just broader holistic review and just how they're looking at your application. So Susie, what does holistic review actually mean in practice? Oh, we lost your audio, I think. Yes. Jeff, you want to take the question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that, defining holistic review may be easier to explain or define by starting with what it isn't. And what it isn't is looking at where they went to college, where they went to medical school. Did they come from what kind of community they came from? Well, that's part of holistic review. It's really just looking at grade scores and using your own individual sense of the quote quality of where they went to college and where an applicant went to medical school, as opposed to looking, at the broader picture of what did they do with their life. Uh, were they, I would rather look at an applicant who went to maybe not an Ivy League school, but had some leadership positions when they were in medical school, or they have a compelling story about overcoming obstacles. Maybe it was somebody who worked at Staples because they were helping to support their family. And then family circumstances allowed them to go to medical school. So it's all the things that they did, all the things that make up that applicant is really what holistic review is, considering the entire person, not just where, as I said, where they went to college, where they went to medical school, and those sorts of things. It's challenging, particularly when you have a large number of applicants that you have to sift through. It's easy to sort of make some off the top decisions based upon very obvious items in the application, but you end up missing so many people that are going to be well suited for your program and get along with others and really learn and thrive and do well at the particular program. So that's sort of a rough overview, I guess, of it. Susie, I don't know whether you want to add anything. If your audio's back, still not back.
No. Want to try
Want
again?
to log off and log back on?
Yeah. And so this is a good lesson that if this happens in your virtual interview for residency, you should let the program know. And kind of as I alluded to in a few sessions back, things don't always go perfectly. And so sometimes you just need to pivot. That's a lesson I learned very regularly in live theater as well. And so a little audio problem we can cover. Susie's back, and let's see, the microphone's working. But yeah, once was in a play where they dropped a china uh, uh, cup on stage and it splattered all over the stage. And fortunately, the character I was playing had a push broom as a prop. And so I entered the show early that night, but saved the show because we decided to have me have a broom. So, Susie, let's try your audio again. Can you hear us?
Yeah, do you hear me?
We do. We fixed it.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, great.
Yeah.
So I actually want to share a funny story.
Yeah.
So, all letters of recommendation are honestly good. Like it's pretty rare that you get a bad letter recommendation, just some are better. And if I recognize the name, I'm like, oh, this person. And there was a letter writer who had a distinct name who was a former trainee of mine who wrote a letter on behalf of somebody. And I said, "Oh wow, well that's somebody whose application I'm going to have to look at." And this person honestly wouldn't have made the cut if it wasn't for that letter writer. But we ended up, inviting this person for an interview, and I actually spoke to this person about it afterwards. Um, and this person had some red flags on the application, but I thought a friend of so and so is a friend of mine. And then I came to discover that this person was not actually an anesthesiologist, but a specialist in another field with the exact same name. And and we were very honest with this applicant and laughed about it. And this person ended up training with us and was fantastic. And so you never know how things work out, but it does show you the power of like knowing the person who writes your letter. Um, Also, I do look at if you've had one of those longitudinal experiences and with somebody in particular, and there is not a letter from that person, I wonder why. And I would advise you to get that letter from that person. That'd be something I'd ask about, actually. Like, it seems like you did work with that person for a long time, and sometimes you find something out that's pretty benign, like, this person actually left the university and I've been unable to contact them, but they were a PI, but it ended up in like not a good situation or some other extenuating circumstance. But I'd want an explanation for that. And mostly I'd want somebody who's had an experience with you to write a letter about it. And I would say the letters fall into two categories, like the people we know as the program directors, and then the people we may not know, but they know you very personally. So, for instance, in anesthesiology, it doesn't even have to be all anesthesiologists, but it should be people who just know you pretty well and write a letter that's sincere. It doesn't have to summarize your CV, but it's sincere.
Yeah, and I think all of these are also just good examples of the fact that you're going to spend a lot of time putting together your applications, and there's going to be connections that certain people make based on the fact that they think they know the letter writer, or it's actually someone else in an entirely different specialty, or just when they read your application, or how they read your application, or something that stands out in your application that you might least expect overall. And so, a lot of good lessons there. So. Let's get into misconceptions and I guess before we even get there, one question I want to ask is what kind of signals are applicants sending in applications that they may not realize?
I think one piece of it is really, if the application gives the sense that you're applying to that institution, that program, or that discipline, as sort of a second or third choice, and again, that may be what your previous experiences were, and you don't really address that in your application. It doesn't feel like there's a real commitment or passion about the discipline. Um, nothing in the letter, in the personal statement, for instance, that really explains why you want to go into whatever you're applying to. Those are signals that would really sort of raise concern amongst the faculty and program director.
Yeah, I think also, Jeff, you said earlier, and I agree with this, it could work for you and against you, but if you've been the president of the emergency medicine group for 4 years and now you're applying to anesthesiology, I want to know why. So that should be explained somewhere. I think it's okay to do that, but if it's not otherwise explained in the application, then I'm assuming you're dually applying to a couple of specialties, and that's okay. And we don't necessarily know that, but at least make the application tell the story about why you're applying to anesthesia. Luckily for like for our specialty in particular, there it could be relevant to a whole bunch of things. Like you might have been involved in a bunch of different types of research projects, and you could write a nice story about how that all led you to wanting to be an anesthesiologist, for instance, because it's all relevant to the practice of anesthesia. I do think that like the signals that you maybe don't want to send, I think come out in the process even beyond just what's written down, how you're interacting in emails to the coordinator. Like if you're not answering emails politely or nicely or on time, like that's sending a signal that you're just not interested. If you're at an open house and your camera's off, that's sending a signal that you're not interested. If you're asking boilerplate questions on an interview, that's sending a signal that either you're really nervous and you're reading a script, which is okay, and I think it's okay to actually say you're nervous, or you're just not interested.
I
Yeah.
might just add here, since it popped into my head,
Mm.
I think almost every program director will have a conversation with their program coordinator. That's the person who does the scheduling and sort of all, manages the interview season. And if there's been an unprofessional interaction between an applicant and the program coordinator, the program director is going to know. So just keep that in mind as whether it's email communication or telephone communication, however you're communicating and leaving impressions with the program coordinator, be professional, because if you're not, it'll definitely work against you.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I mean, those are important lessons. I think the other piece that I think is worth just also considering is trying to be your authentic self in your application. And, Jeff talked about alignment and just trying to understand that you're trying to write your application for the story of the story that you want versus I think the story you may think people want to hear. I remember when I was even applying to medical school, an interviewer asked me a question, and it was about kind of humanities stuff that was going on at their institution. And I was incredibly interested in the humanities, and I was very involved with it in medical school. For some reason, on that day, in the way the interviewer asked the question, I made it seem like no, I was going to be a bit more focused on being in medical school based on an interview I had with a prior institution immediately prior to that, where I gave almost the exact opposite answer, which was the actual answer I should have given and gave in almost every scenario. But I didn't there. And then I gave kind of the nah. And they said, well, that's a shame because we have all these great, great programs here. And I hadn't realized that it was kind of a lead-in to a discussion with me. And we got there anyway, but it was just such an awkward way into that. This is more in the interview phase. But I think it's just a really important lesson to be yourself. I think that said, it's also good to balance that authenticity and understand that it is a job application, essentially, even though it's not technically a job, it's technically a trainee position. But we as physicians, a lot of what has driven us into medicine has been our own or our families or people close to us struggles with medicine or healthcare or otherwise. And so if you're going to tell that story and it's an important and authentic part of your story, I would just I would just make sure one, you tell it in a way that you're comfortable with telling it, that sits well with you, but also recognize that everyone on the other side of that is a physician and they're going to interpret things like that in different ways, be it stories of resiliency or potential concerns or anywhere and everywhere in between, and different programs may interpret the exact same story in completely opposite ways. So I think it's just things to consider overall. Misconceptions overall in general. I think, you'll hear from a lot of people that this part of the application is everything and that part of the application is everything. I think one big takeaway tonight so far, just from Jeff and Susie, is that there's a lot of different elements of this application that programs are looking for, and different pieces resonate with different people. Um, so I guess we'll go into the story time section. I guess before we get there again, question I have is uh, what happens after individual reviewers kind of finish reading applications?
Well, I want to just clarify one thing that you just said, Jason, because
Sure.
I tell my residents differently. I actually tell my beginning residents that residency is a job, and it's a
Oh, it
training
is a
position.
job. Yes,
It is
yes.
a job, but I say
Yeah.
it's like your 3 to 7 year job interview for your next job, because the other part about it being a program director is then we have to fill out your forms for your next job, like your credentialing paperwork, and just make it easy for us to fill that out. Um, what do we talk about afterwards?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, we're all people, right? Program directors are people. We all want to feel chosen. You want to feel chosen. We're hoping you love us as much as we love you. And so we're sitting around saying, we really like this person. Do you think they like us too? Is there, were they, we're going back to the open houses, the interview day, all the little notes we've written, when they said that, do you think they said that like, oh, I really liked being here? Or like, do you think we're going to be their second or third choice? Like, I guess it's one big kind of like, a big dating game. And hopefully it's about shared values and not necessarily like the first impressions. But we actually, I think some people are sticklers for, I don't want you to there's not going to be any post-interview communication. I've never been that way as a program director. We're not allowed to ask you what you feel about us, and you're not allowed to ask us what we feel about you. But there certainly can be normal human communication where you share how you feel, or if you have any other questions, and we pay attention to that because we all want to be loved. I certainly don't want anybody in my program who doesn't want to be in my program, that's for sure, or who doesn't want to be in Rochester.
And Susie, I imagine you would recommend that people ask the program director how they feel about that. Some absolutely don't want
Yes, correct.
any subsequent communication. Others welcome it. Some,
Correct.
will
Correct.
just ignore it, so it doesn't help you one way or the other.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll get to post in interview communications several sessions from now as well. But yeah, but I guess I mean even here, just so you finish reading an application, and some of your other faculty are reading an application, like you both get your interpretation of what the applicant's narrative is, and then what happens?
Yeah, honestly, it's groupthink to some extent. The program director is getting everybody together, either in person or getting written comments or electronic comments, and perceptions, and trying to synthesize that. And it's a process of synthesizing a lot of information and doing the best you can as a program director to identify those candidates that you want to interview. And through the interview process, of course, you'll figure out who's the best match for your program and whatnot. But it's really getting everything together and you know trying to identify those who you want to match, and again, post interview, using the interview information to then sort of hone down your list for a match.
Yeah,
Awesome.
what we specifically do is after people review the applications, they put little notes in. And then before the interview, those of us who are interviewing, some of us have access to the notes, not everybody has access to the notes. And then after the interview, that group of people who've done the interviews meet as a group to talk about all the applicants together. It's really interesting how sometimes the applicants say the same thing to everybody, but in a different way, or specifically don't, or they say something to somebody but not to somebody else, and we compare notes that way. And then it's important to kind of clarify or qualify what that is on the day of the interview so that it's saved for later on, so it jars our memories when we're putting together the rank list.
Yeah, super helpful. So, I guess building off of that to kind of move into story time here, can you tell us about an applicant that completely surprised you as you read their application?
Susie, you want to go?
I mean, yeah, so many stories. I love it. I mean, it's gone in different directions, honestly. Like there was somebody whose application I just couldn't wait to talk to him based on his application. It was a lot about mental health. And then when I actually met him in person, he actually did not buy into mental health diagnoses at all once we started talking about it. And it's like very confused and it put me off. And I wondered whether he actually wrote his essay. I thought his essays was like one of the best essays I'd ever written. Um, and then conversely, I recently looked back at some people who I know who are attendings. Either they stayed in our department or they went off in other places. And I was like, I wonder what I thought about them when they interviewed. And they were just completely nondescript. Like there was nothing terribly memorable, and the conversations were like probably would do fine. Didn't seem to, and this is like one of the most beloved people in our department right now. So it just goes to show you that the process is not 100% sensitive or specific for anything. Um, and sometimes the most memorable things are memorable because they're good memorable. And sometimes the fact that they're actually not memorable means absolutely nothing. And they turn out to be really amazing doctors.
Yeah, the process is quite imperfect. I think that's a good example there. I would say all interview processes are quite imperfect. I actually was reading an article today by Seth Godin about kind of business hiring and the cost of business hiring and how many people you should talk to if even if you have really, really specific criteria of the role you're looking to fill before you say yes, and the challenges of not saying yes soon enough, and the drag on the culture and the organization and the leadership and the interview panel in not saying yes soon enough and having to interview more and more people. And the parallel I thought was just very, very similar to graduate medical education as well, just because there's a lot of people coming through and being interviewed for a position, and then being ranked as well. And so I think these are all important lessons. Jeff, what about you?
It's been a very long time since I interviewed medical students applying for internship, but I'll tell two fellowship application stories because I think that they're entirely applicable to applying to medical school. One is that we had two candidates coming from the Penn internal medicine program applying for fellowship. And I had talked to the medicine program director about the two of them. And it was very clear in talking with her that she thought one was a better candidate for our program than the other. And then I got her the letters of recommendation that she had written, and I called her up and I said, you gave me a very different sense about the two of them when we spoke, but their letters are identical. She said, no, they're not. Put them side by side and read them that way, and you'll understand what I'm trying to say. It was that nuanced sometimes. It really points to the challenges of distinguishing one applicant from another. The letters literally needed to be put side by side and read that way to really understand what the program director was trying to say. And then the other is also about an applicant to our fellowship program. And this came at a time when Penn was really could be pretty selective in who they interviewed and took into the fellowship program. And there was an applicant he was an international medical graduate, had gone to a Philadelphia area residency program where he had never taken anybody from. And it was an okay residency program, but not at the top of the heap. He was just so compelling when you interviewed him, telling his story, how he came to the United States, what he had overcome to train. And he had had contact with some of our faculty who just raved about him. And I was program director. I took what I thought was a pretty big chance on him because, again, we had never had anybody from that residency program. And he's now on our faculty, an associate professor, and doing amazingly well. So again, I think it's incumbent upon program directors to look for the diamond in the rough. And it's important for you as an applicant to tell your story and make sure that you can stand out and show your strengths in your application and through your interview.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the importance of that narrative theme. I think, as you can see here, the process isn't perfect. There are people trying to make decisions, ingesting a lot of information, but what's standing out is kind of those pieces of the narrative that they're able to connect to. And also, there's also the counter to that, in the sense of sometimes there's not an overly compelling connection, but somehow you end up matching in a program and it ends up being a great alignment and fit for you as well. So there's a lot that goes into this process, a lot of twists and turns, and you both have given us a lot of pieces of advice. And so I think we'll get to more pieces of advice in the questions as well. So for the sake of time, kind of want to summarize a lot of what we've been talking about tonight and then open it up for questions. But every application tells a story, and it starts with self-reflection and figuring out the physician that you want to be and the specialty that you want to practice and the patients that you want to treat. Context matters as much as content. Professionalism is communicated throughout the process, including all of your interactions, but also your application. And again, this is more from my perspective. Try not to chase prestige, chase purpose. Prestige will find you, but if you have purpose, that is, I think, what will continue to help you find passion in the work that you're doing. So again, the key here is the goal isn't to build an application that appeals to every program. You can do that. I'd recommend, though, to tell your story clearly enough that the right programs recognize you, because that's where you want to train. You want to train at a program that wants you and vice versa. And yeah, when Susie's faculty get together and said, are they going to come here? You want to be the person that they're going to say yes to and that they really want you to say yes to because that's going to be the faculty that's going to be supportive of you in your career. And that's going to be the faculty that when you need to move on to fellowship or into practice, that is going to be supporting you along the way. And those are going to be the relationships you're going to have throughout the rest of your professional career as well. So, um, again, we'll announce the next sessions. The next will be in mid-August for session. Will be August 11th. The next one will be August 11th for the IMG journey, and the one after that will be in mid-August, and we'll announce the exact time as well as the rest of the dates for the session along here. Again, session 7 is not August 9th. It will be in later August, and we'll get to questions in just a moment. But just some housekeeping. Should say session 4 survey, but in any case, you can do the session 5 survey early. This will take you to the actual session 4 survey. We would love your input and your feedback. I've miscounted. I've just done so many of these at this point. But please give us your continued feedback. Tonight was obviously a little bit of a different session and more of a fireside chat. We've done presentations, we've done panels. We have a lot of other different session formats as well coming forward as too. For those of you that like to join us at the Thala Synapse, this is our national tour. The second half of it is kicking off next week in Washington, D.C., and then Philly, Chicago, Miami, Houston, and closing out in San Francisco. We still have a few tickets left for students that through thalamus.org we're willing to sponsor for complimentary. If you're in any of these cities and would like to join us, you can email us at synapse@thalamusgme.com. Just say you came to this session and you're interested in attending the Synapse, and we can get you set up there as well. This is like Med Ed meets tech conferences, and so we've been having some great discussions and fireside chats there as well. One other quick announcement is we announced today an entirely new applicant experience in Thalamus that will be available starting August 3rd, and thereby anyone applying this season can take advantage of it. We've taken a lot of applicant feedback and input. It's our largest investment in the applicant side of the platform in over 6 years, essentially since COVID. But we've rebuilt our entire mobile app and applicant experience on the web. We've created ways to streamline scheduling of interviews even more. We're really excited about rolling this out. We're excited that fellowship applicants are going to be able to use it in the coming weeks also. If you go to thalamusgme.com, you can click on the banner at the top and learn more about the applicant experience. We will go through this a lot more in the upcoming sessions also. Okay, we made it. Thank you for going through those administrative things with me, but would love to open it up to questions for Susie and Jeff.